Hello, my name is Shreyas and I'm in grade 9 at Fairview School. I'll be presenting my 2025 CYSF project, Time on the Wire. Before I start, here's a little intro. This project explores neural transmission in the brain, how it changes with age, and the potential role of technology in managing neurological diseases. Neurotransmission allows the brain to process thought, movement, memory, and sensation. As people age or develop neurological diseases, the system becomes less effective. This project investigates why that happens and whether technology can help. Here's my question and hypothesis, which I used to guide my research. You can see these on screen now. Throughout my project, I made several changes to the way I research and the scope of research to better account for time. If time permits, though, I aim to have a lot more done before April. Initially, I wanted to research neurological diseases as a whole. However, after realizing that was way too ambitious with the help of teacher feedback, I narrowed it down to something way more manageable. In this project, I aim to discover the causes of Alzheimer's disease, generalized as dementia, and Parkinson's disease, learn how the brain and thought work, including how neurons are formed and transmit information, examine how these diseases are treated and managed currently, and explore potential solutions using technology and electricity as outlined in my hypothesis. My research was divided into three phases. Phase 1 was the brain, neurotransmission as a whole, basically how the brain works and how thought is processed and formed. Common diseases and their causes, more specifically dementia and Parkinson's, and how they are currently treated, and potential solutions, which I discovered through research and will share with you throughout the presentation. I will now go through each phase individually. Phase 1 was the brain. I'll first be going through major parts of the brain. The brain is made up of three main parts: the cerebrum, which controls movement, speech, thought, senses, and temperature; the brainstem, which connects the brain to the spinal cord; and the cerebellum, which maintains posture, equilibrium, and balance. The cerebral cortex forms the outer gray matter layer of the cerebrum, and each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body. Within the brainstem itself, there are more organs to speak of, those being the midbrain, which facilitates hearing, movement, and responses to environmental changes. It contains the substantia nigra, an area rich in dopamine that is affected in Parkinson's disease. The pons, which controls facial expression, balance, hearing, chewing, blinking, and vision. And the medulla, which regulates heart rhythm, breathing, and reflexes such as coughing and sneezing. The brain can be divided into four lobes. The frontal lobe, responsible for personality, decision-making, movement, speech, and smell. The parietal lobe, which manages spatial awareness, touch, pain perception, and aspects of hearing. The occipital lobe, responsible for vision, depth perception, and color perception. And the temporal lobe, which handles memory, speech, musical perception, and smell recognition. Other important structures within the brain include the pituitary gland, which controls hormone flow; the hypothalamus, which regulates temperature, sleep, hunger, thirst, memory, and emotion; the amygdala, responsible for emotion and instincts; the hippocampus, which supports memory and learning; the ventricles, which produce CSF to cushion the brain and spinal cord; and the pineal gland, which controls the sleep-wake cycle. The brain is made up of gray matter and white matter. Gray matter contains neurons and processes information. White matter consists of myelinated axons that allow communication between brain regions. Neurons are made up of a cell body, which contains genetic material, an axon, which transmits electrical signals called action potentials, and dendrites, which receive signals from other neurons. Neural transmission occurs through two types of synapses: chemical synapses, which use neurotransmitters, and electrical synapses, which use direct ion flow. An action potential occurs when the neuron reaches a threshold potential of approximately -50 to -55 millivolts. The resting potential of a neuron is about -70 millivolts. Now I'll be explaining how neural transmission works. In chemical transmission, Neurotransmitters bind to receptors on dendrites, opening ion channels. If the voltage reaches the threshold at the axon hillock, an axon potential travels down the axon and releases neurotransmitters at the synapse. In electrical transmission, ions pass directly between neurons through gap junctions called connexons. This process is faster and bidirectional, with ATP-powered ion pumps restoring ion balance. I'll be moving on to Phase 2, Common Diseases and Their Causes, in which I'll be discussing dementia and Parkinson's. I'll start with dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term for diseases that affect cognitive performance. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form, accounting for 60 to 80% of diagnoses. Common symptoms include memory loss, difficulty with problem solving in language, and mood and behavioral changes. Dementia is progressive and can lead to complications such as pneumonia, dependence, and safety issues. Dementia is caused by the degradation of nerve cells and their connections. In Alzheimer's disease, beta amyloid plaques form between neurons and tau protein tangles form inside neurons. Beta amyloid fragments, especially amyloid beta 42, clump together into plaques. Tau proteins undergo hyperphosphorylation, destabilizing microtubules and damaging neurons internally. Some of dementia's risk factors include age, especially after the age of 65, family history, and Down syndrome. Other risk factors can be changed, including lifestyle, untreated sensory loss, head injuries, and vitamin deficiencies. Moving on to Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder that affects movement, balance, and speech. Early symptoms include tremors, slowed movement, falls, and slurred speech. It can also affect thinking, which includes memory, sleep, digestion, and sensory perception. Moving on to the causes of Parkinson's disease, which include genetics, environmental toxins and drugs such as MPTP, and family history. In affected brains, Lewy bodies form inside neurons. These are made of alpha-synuclein protein, which clumps together and disrupts neural function, sometimes leading to Lewy body dementia. Moving on to the final phase of this project, Phase 3, Solutions. Firstly, I'll be talking about the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system clears waste from the brain, including proteins, potassium, and lactic acid. It works by CSF entering the brain along blood vessels and waste being cleaned from brain tissue. From there, ISF carries the waste out, waste enters the lymphatic system and bloodstream, and it's finally removed through urine and feces. Protein buildup occurs when proteins fold incorrectly and clump together. Electrolytic lesions involve forcing electricity into the brain tissue. This method is not selective. It destroys neurons along with protein buildup, making it unsafe and ineffective. It destroys everything that the electricity comes into contact with. Deep brain stimulation, or DBS, uses implanted electrodes to stimulate brain cells, helps maintain neural activity and thought speed, and has been proven effective for Parkinson's disease. DBS involves 2 surgeries and carries risks, including mood changes, movement issues, and surgical complications. There is currently no known link between DBS and Alzheimer's disease. However, scientists are currently trying to figure something out. Moving on to the conclusion. My hypothesis was partially correct. Through the research of DBS, I was able to confirm that electrical stimulation can be used to treat Parkinson's. However, this treatment is only still treatment and not a cure. For dementia, however, it's a different tale. I haven't been able to confirm that electrical stimulation can affect protein buildups in the brain. All solutions that currently exist involve dangerous procedures that would take a long time to implement safely and cannot be physically tested at a grade 9 level. However, I learned a lot about the brain, including how neurotransmission works, how thought is processed, what causes diseases in the brain, and how changes in your lifestyle can help reduce the impact of these diseases. I found this project very enlightening because it covers a topic with personal meaning to me and isn't something I would have learned if it wasn't for this project. Now, before I wrap this up, just a few more points. Firstly, this isn't the end of the road. I have plans to build upon this research, which I hope to complete in a few months. Even though I've found solutions to 50% of the problem, that's not enough. I have plans to do a lot more work, which will be completed by April, time permitting. It goes without saying that I have an absolute ton of people to thank, who you can see on screen now. Over the last couple of months, I've learned a lot of new information about one of the most interesting and exciting branches of science. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.